Hello, everybody, and welcome to Manny Insights podcast here on the. No? Okay. 10. You want me to count to 10? I'm good? All right. Hello, everybody. It is Monday, and welcome to Manny Insights here on the channel. Another edition of the podcast. This time I'm going to change it a little bit. A lot of. One more time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Manny Insights here on the YouTube channel. This podcast, we're just going to talk ball like usual. Obviously, World Series just ended. Yankees lost in 5. That was embarrassing, but we won't go over that. It's a little bit of yesterday's news. We're going to talk some NFL. Then we'll go into some offseason buzz, mostly NFL, though. And there's a big topic going around, especially the way some of the quarterbacks that I'm going to mention soon, how the way they've been playing, they brought this up, sort of. And it's that, we can't pay good quarterbacks great money. Segue into that. First, let's just go over the Cowboys game. The Falcons won yesterday by a score of 27-21, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that was the score, 27-21. It wasn't that close. The Cowboys are the kings of kind of back-ending teams. If you're a gambler, I guess, if there's ever a big spread, if they're ever big underdogs, I guess they're a good bet. We saw it against the Ravens. They were getting blown out. They almost come back. That also has to do a little bit with the Ravens not being great at finishing teams, although they did yesterday against the Broncos. But they kind of back-end here. The Falcons, they only lost by 6. It was mostly a 2-possession game. Cooper Rush threw a touchdown. Got a little lucky. He kind of fumbled, and then he picked it up. But it's football. It's part of the game. Whatever happens, it's a crazy game. We saw how the Jets game went down. And then the Giants, they lost by 5. The Giants are 2-7. Both teams not going to make the playoffs. What do these two teams have in common? They probably got a little bit trigger happy when it comes to signing their quarterbacks. And I'll go over the Cowboys a little bit because they, at least I thought, that they were playing a hand similar to, not to cross sports here, but the Yankees played with Aaron Judge, which, by the way, they ended up having to pay him a ton of money. But if you remember, going into that 62 home run season, they didn't want to give him, I think it was like a $200 million contract. They were basically telling him, prove it. Let's see if you're that guy. He definitely proved it in the regular season at least. And then he garnered a $360 million contract. I thought that's what the Cowboys were going to do with Dak Prescott. They spent the whole offseason, Jerry Jones coming on the radio, kind of saying, like, we don't like the deal. We're going to negotiate. We're not going to give up our hand. It is whatever. And they end up signing him right before the start of the season, and they make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I don't know why they waited for guys like Trevor Lawrence to sign, Jordan Love. I think Tua actually signed this offseason as well. They waited, and they end up having to give him more money probably, or $60 million is kind of what he wanted, but they probably could have, or they could have signed him earlier and had a better plan for the offseason. They didn't do anything this offseason. They didn't address the running back issue, and then Jerry Jones comes out and says Derrick Henry wouldn't succeed in our system. That's just a horrible quote. Says a lot about what you think about your coaching staff, who you had so much faith in bringing back, and you talk so good about to the media. But then again, they did the same thing with CeeDee Lamb. They wait. A.J. Brown signs. This guy, Justin Jefferson signed. Brandon Ayuk signs. And then we got to give CeeDee Lamb like $36 million a year when you could have given him less if you signed him earlier. So it's just messy. They don't run the franchise well. I'll give them something. They draft well. But then again, if they don't continue to draft well, which it seems like this is probably one of their weaker draft classes and one of their weaker teams now that Micah Parsons and DeMarcus and Lawrence got hurt, they're going to look like this because you're paying a good quarterback great money. Dak Prescott's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's certainly not the best quarterback in the NFL. Right now, he's getting paid like it. Then to go towards the Giants, Daniel Jones, not even a good quarterback in the NFL, and he's on the same level as Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford. He's sandwiched in between them when it comes to highest paid quarterbacks. and it just doesn't work. And to kind of finish the point with the Cowboys, I mean, if the Cowboys would have just given Dak a 1-year deal or let him play out his contract and waited, they would have saved some money. The way he's playing, the way the Cowboys are playing, they definitely would have had a good point to not give him $60 million a year going forward, and who knows what would have happened. But I'm just going to go over the guys in the NFL who you can pay and still win. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is one. My list right here is Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford. Now, I know Burrow doesn't have the greatest record this year. I just think it's kind of a weird year, the way the whole T. Higgins situation went down. I mean, they play good teams well, but they've lost to some bad teams. They bounced back against the Raiders. They always start bad. I still have faith this team is going to make the playoffs and make a run. And people are saying, people still like Joe Burrow because he beat Mahomes once. He also made it to the conference championship the year after and was very close to reaching 2 straight Super Bowls. He's a great quarterback. He wasn't in the greatest situation. The offensive line was not good. He was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL the year they made the Super Bowl, and he was still putting up good numbers, and he's still doing it right now. So those guys win. Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl. He is still excellent. The Rams are doing well. They started rough this year, kind of like last year. I still think the Rams are one of the premier teams in the NFC. They're kind of on that upwards trend, especially in a pretty bad division. Maybe not a bad division, but not the greatest division. And then Jalen Hurts, turnover issue, but he's kind of cleaned that up. I know he has a ton of weapons. Maybe you could put him into the to be determined box, but he was so excellent in that Super Bowl. He was so great that year, and it seems like. And at the first half of last year, he was also good. I mean, they started 10-1, fell off, started rough this year, but he seems to be doing well. And with a running game, he's been excellent. Josh Allen doesn't have any MVPs, doesn't have any Super Bowls, but we're seeing that the man. I mean, he's their run game sometimes. Not this year, but years past, he was literally their run game, and they were still making it to the conference championship. He's also a great throw of the football. So then the to-be-determined box. Jordan Love, we'll put him there because, I mean, I just haven't seen enough, and he just signed. They have a good record, though. Then again, 2 of those wins were with Malik Willis. Jared Goff, the reason he's not in the for sure, you could pay him, is because he's so bad under pressure, like literally, not figuratively. I mean, if he's excellent in the play action, but if you get a good pass rush against Jared Goff, that's when we've seen him at his worst. And the Lions have all those guys on the offensive line. When they have to start paying guys and maybe getting rid of guys, if they can't replace those guys at a level which we've seen teams have to deal with, I don't know how great Jared Goff will be. I love Jared Goff. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. But a lot of quarterbacks, I mean, they need something to be great. And I think the guys up top don't necessarily need it perfect for them to win games and for them to be great in the NFL. C.J. Stroud, he's very young. We'll see. Jaden Daniels, he's been incredible. He's been awesome. But then again, we have to see more down the line. I don't want to kind of rush. So then, not worth it. Guys who have gotten paid, and we're seeing why it's not worth it because, I mean, they got paid. They got paid after having a good year where they weren't getting paid anything, and the team around them was good. And then after that, you got to pay them. The team starts getting worse and worse and worse because of the cap. And the quarterbacks start getting worse and worse and worse as well. Daniel Jones, ever since he signed this contract, 3-12, that's abysmal, and a 78.7 passer rating. Keep in mind, the average passer rating in the NFL is about 90, so he's way below average, and of course, I mean, wins and losses and passer rating. Russell Wilson with Denver, so I'm not going to count the Steelers because he's making the minimum with Pittsburgh. So they're obviously the team that's built around him. I mean, his cap hit has nothing to do with Pittsburgh. Denver's eating all of it. 11-19 and a 90 passer rating when he was in Denver. 11-19, obviously horrible. Blame it on Nathaniel Hackett. Blame it on whoever you want. But Sean Payton moved off of him for a reason, and Bo Nix looks pretty solid. Deshaun Watson, probably the worst contract in all of sports with Cleveland. 9-10 and an 80.7 passer rating. Bad, and he was horrible this year. Dak Prescott this year, he's 3-5 and he has an 86 passer rating. Trevor Lawrence this year, he signed it in the offseason, 2-7 and an 87.9 passer rating this year. I'm actually pretty high on Lawrence, but he hasn't proved it. He was a generational talent coming in. At least he looked like one, and he just hasn't been able to get it done. The record is bad. The team is bad, and he's not performing at the level that we all expected him to perform at. And then Kyler Murray, since he signed, I know he's having a pretty good year this year, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. When he was at his best and when the Cardinals were at his best with Cliff Kingsbury, they would always start hot in the beginning of the year and then just completely fall off. They started like 7-0 one year and then got bumped in the first round to the Rams. So I'm not completely sold on them yet, although they're leading that division and they look pretty good. He's 11-17 since 2022 and has a 91.3 passer rating. So to kind of finish off this point, the only quarterbacks this century who have won a Super Bowl while taking 12% or more of their team's cap space, so these guys are either one of or the highest paid player on their team. Patrick Mahomes, who's actually like the 13th highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now, but when he won 12% or more. Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. People argue that those are probably the 3 best quarterbacks of all time. So if you don't have one of those guys and you give them a ton of money and they take up a bunch of the cap, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. I mean, it's happened in the last 24 years. I think that's a pretty big enough sample size. And in years past, quarterbacks, yeah, they were paid well, but they didn't put the emphasis or they weren't paid as high as they are right now, obviously. And then if we bump it down to 10% or more, only 2 guys get added to the list. Matthew Stafford, who I think is a Hall of Famer and is on the list that I mentioned before of guys that you can pay. Obviously, he won. And he still continues to be good on a team that is pretty limited, especially offensive when it comes to the offensive line. They also lost Aaron Donald. And Eli Manning. Eli Manning, Hall of Famer. He won 2 Super Bowls. And honestly, he wasn't great in the regular season year after year, but he was so great in those playoffs. And, I mean, the mix of that and the pass rush, they were able to win. 5 guys this century who make up 12% or more of their team's cap space. And I know Brady and Mahomes make up maybe almost half of those Super Bowls. But only 5 guys have been able to win that way. So it's just not a formula. I don't think Dak Prescott, I don't even think Brock Purdy, who's up almost, and I like Brock Purdy a lot, but he's almost getting paid. The Niners got to be careful. They got to see this. They got to see how he's been playing without the Avengers, as people in the media like to say. And, I mean, he just hasn't been great. I don't think he's in the elite of the elite. And the Giants had to let go of Saquon. The Cowboys, I mean, once their pass rushers are gone, CD was hurt yesterday. I mean, they're just a bad football team. They're a bad football team right now. And you can't be a bad football team when you're paying one guy $60 million a year to play the most important position in the game. It's just bad. All right. Excuse me. Let's move on to just finish off here. Baseball, offseason. One name, his biggest name, Juan Soto. I know there's other guys do. I mean, Corbin Burns. It's also a pretty important contract coming up. But we'll just go into Juan Soto. I mean, the Mets, the Yankees, it's a war right now. I know the Blue Jays are included. They're going to throw him a bunch of money. Maybe the Giants throw a bone as well at him. But Juan Soto, this is so important when it comes to the battle for New York. The Yankees, I would say, I guess, won this year because they made it to the World Series, and the Mets got bumped in the NLCS. Now, I would say Mets fans felt better about their team than Yankee fans did at the end of this year. And I think right now the feeling is Mets fans are a little more optimistic than Yankee fans going into this offseason and going into next year. Mets weren't expected to really contend. A bunch of the money taken up in their luxury tax and in their I mean, there's no salary cap, but of the amount of money they were paying, a lot of it was guys not on their team. They traded Scherzer, they traded Verlander, and they ate a lot of the money to get better pieces in those trades. So the Mets got bumped in the NLCS. Fans feel a little bit better. Now apparently they're going to go sign Soto. The Yankees got to be careful here. I mean, if you're really the big, bad Yankees that you've been and that you were during the dynasty, that you were when George was alive, you can't get little brothered by the Mets. There's been one decade where the Mets were able to take over New York, and it was the 80s. They won the World Series. They made it to the CS a couple times. And the Yankees, I mean, other than Don Mattingly, Winfield, who they had, and other guys, I mean, they were just never able to really get over the hump. I would say the Mets, with their star power, I mean, Gary Carter, Darryl Strawberry, Keith Hernandez, Doc Gooden, that was the team. They were so much more polarizing than the Yankees at the time. and they took over the city. If the Mets, after this year, sign Juan Soto, make another move for the rotation, and start winning after little brothering the Yankees, and they would be in a better position to win than the Yankees going into next year, then you get into something pretty serious, and you're going to have to make some real decisions in Yankee land. And, I mean, listening to WFAN right now is just, I mean, there's so much craziness and I guess division between the cities. I mean, honestly, I was rooting for the Mets when they were in the postseason because I live here. I mean, all New Yorkers, you want to see New York teams win. But if they sign Juan Soto, there's going to be a real rivalry. There's going to be a lot of bad blood, maybe either way, even if the Yankees sign him. But it just can't happen. That is code red for everyone in the Bronx. My only point is, if you let Juan Soto walk and go to Queens, you might lose the city for the first time in 40 years. And you just can't have that if you're the Steinbreiners. That's my take, and those are my takes for today's show. Thank you so much for watching Manny Insight. Stay tuned for more content coming your way very soon. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the sports week. See ya.